Okay, gang, we're ready to start off our show this morning, but first I want to thank the Kauffman Foundation for all that they do and have done for us. They have sponsored this breakfast and they're sponsoring this particular session, but they have done so many other things for us, and we want to really thank them for what they're doing. But I think, frankly, most importantly, we want to thank them for what they stand for. The whole notion, I was just saying to Tom a little bit earlier, that about 10 years ago, a number of our presidents approached the association and said, you know, all we do is train and educate people to work for somebody else, and that's not right. And at first it was just 2 or 3 presidents, and we want to find a way to change that. And before you know it, it began to be a real groundswell of presidents who said, we want to do that, and then the product of that was NACCE, frankly. And the presidents themselves said, we need to train and educate people to work for themselves. And that's what the Kauffman Foundation stands for. And that's really what I mean when I say we ought to give them a hand for what they stand for and what they incentivize. Let's do that. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce one of my favorite presidents, Smiling Roy Church. Would you come up here, Roy? Where are you? Hey, there you go. See, what a smile. Thank you, Roy. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jim. I'm absolutely delighted to be here this morning. You know, I've been in our business for quite a few years, and I'm always impressed that community college educators will get up on Saturday morning of a multi-day conference and come with this level of enthusiasm. So congratulations, and thank you so much for being part of this morning. We are absolutely delighted to come to this conference year after year because workforce development is an absolutely critical component to the economic success of the United States. And nobody does economic development through workforce preparation better than community colleges. But that's not what I'm here to talk with you about this morning. What I want to talk about is the other side of that equation. You know, we've realized quite a long time ago, as Jim indicates, that you really have to focus on both sides of the equation. On the one hand, you have to grow the talent. You have to help people get the skills and abilities they need to be successful in the current nature of the economy with which they're dealing. But on the other side, you have to help the community grow the jobs. And you can't grow jobs without growing companies. And so we were part of that groundswell that tried to look at what it is we could be doing that would help grow jobs in our community. And so I want to talk a little bit about that this morning. As Tom Rue from the Kauffman Foundation, who I'll be introducing momentarily, knows well, that jobs created in the United States over the last 30 years, the net number of new jobs created over 30 years all came from entrepreneurs and young startup companies. And just think about that. I mean, if you're going to focus on the growing the jobs part of the equation, where do you have to focus? You have to focus on entrepreneurs and startups. And NACCE certainly was one response to that, but I've been absolutely excited by what I see at individual institutions across the country. One of the things that we've learned from really solid research is that entrepreneurs need a few key resources to grow new high-tech, high-growth companies and create jobs and create wealth in our community. First of all, they need mentorship. They need coaching, they need teaching, they need mentoring. When you think about entrepreneurs, they've got creative ideas, but most of them didn't go to business school. Most of them don't know how to wrap a business around a great idea. So the first thing they need is coaching, teaching, mentoring. And secondly, they need funding. You know what happens after they've exhausted friends and family, exhausted their credit cards? You know, they used to be able to get second mortgages, but how do they get launched with those very earliest dollars before revenue, before their company has any revenue, before they have any assets, so they can't borrow any money? How do they get started? They need to have support from an innovative environment. They need to have what Richard Florida calls in his book, The Creative Class, that environment that feeds on itself, that is supported by other entrepreneurs. They also need access to talent. They need to have others to help drive their idea into the creation of a business. And guess where talent resides in most of our communities? Right in our institutions. And then sometimes they need specialized equipment and facilities. We recognize these things in Lorain County because Lorain County has faced some very serious economic challenges over the years. As some of you know, Lorain County Community College is on the coast of Lake Erie, just west of Cleveland, the industrial heartland over the last 30 years. 1980, 43% of all people in Lorain County who had jobs worked directly in manufacturing. Today, it's 13%. And so our county over 30 years has gone through a major economic transformation. So our community is calling on all of its resources, especially its community college, to not only grow the talent, but to take a leadership role in stimulating the growth of new jobs and companies. In 2001, we took the first step toward our giving our region's entrepreneurs, those potential job creators, the resources they need to be successful. We discovered the importance of community-based entrepreneurs. You know, as we've done this work now for over a decade, it's become clear that over 80% of the entrepreneurial ideas that turn into companies come from folks all across our communities, not from what folks would tend to perceive as the traditional pipeline. That's university research, to the Office of Technology Transfer, to the creation of new companies and new jobs. Over 80% comes the other way, comes from folks throughout our community. And guess who's got access to those folks? Who provides the resource to those folks? It's our institutions in our own local community. So over the last decade, we've engaged the community to put in place a set of resources to try to address those factors needed by entrepreneurs. The first was a business incubator. Now, I'm not talking necessarily about a physical space, although we have over 20 companies incubating in about a 20,000 square foot facility right now. What I'm really talking about is providing the coaching, teaching, mentoring that those entrepreneurs need to be able to build their companies. Then we created the region's earliest pre-seed investment fund, which we called the Innovation Fund, operated by the Lorain County Community College Foundation and supported by government and philanthropy. The idea was to use philanthropic dollars from entrepreneurs who already succeeded to help the next generation of entrepreneurs coming along. We also put in place some specialized equipment that would help entrepreneurs through the technological morass of creating a commercializable product. We created a rapid prototyping center and a sensor commercialization center for microsystems. And of course, we provided the entrepreneurial base. We had a lot of students, and they're students of all ages with great ideas, and so what they needed was the access to the knowledge necessary to promote their ideas and to create them into businesses. So we have students of all ages in credit courses, degrees in entrepreneurship, non-credit courses, and even co-curricular educational experiences to support the entrepreneurial student. The impact of these has contributed greatly to making Lorain County a great place to launch and to grow a technology-based business. Tom Rue and the Kauffman Foundation get it. They see the potential of community colleges to serve as the front door for entrepreneurs in local communities. The entrepreneurship is, that entrepreneurship certainly is an educational process. It's one that doesn't necessarily take place inside of a traditional classroom, but can live and be nurtured through the assets of our community college. I'm excited to be partnering with the Kauffman Foundation. This is made possible by a grant last year where the Kauffman Foundation and Lorain County Community College are working closely together to scale the Innovation Fund that we pioneered in Northeast Ohio for demonstration at other community colleges through the creation of a new nonprofit organization called Innovation Fund America. Everyone, please welcome my friend, Mr. Tom Rue, the Vice President of Entrepreneurship at the Ewan Marion Kauffman Foundation, for more on Kauffman's commitment to entrepreneurship through community colleges and partnership. Tom?
Thank you, Roy. You know, you're a tough act to follow this early in the morning. If you ever have, I know you're very athletic, so you probably don't have high blood pressure issues, but if you ever do, you might want to consider going to decaf. Kauffman is known for several years about the terrific work that Roy and his colleagues have been doing to make Lorain County Community College a true front door for entrepreneurship in Northeast Ohio. Roy just described, you know, what they've done to take entrepreneurship support far beyond saying, there's the office of the SBDC. For too many people, that is the entrepreneurship plan on their campus. In no small part, due to the work of Lorain County Community College, Northeast Ohio is now a great place to start and grow new companies. And due to their impressive outcomes, they are challenging some of the area's conclusions or notions, because like every other community around the country, Northeast Ohio had to go through a rebirthing with the fall off of manufacturing and other industries. And there were ideas that were proffered forward and are still very much in practice. But this very humble little thing that started over there at Lorain County Community College and the outcomes they're having with that are shaking the very notions of things that we've been holding on to for a decade or more as, you know, the best practices. And that's one of the wonderful things that I really enjoy and appreciate about the program. The college mentors entrepreneurs as they grow their businesses, helping them to prove their concepts are viable, develop markets for their product or service, while helping them advance the next level of funding if necessary, usually in the form of angel or venture capital. One of the aspects that I like most about the program is that these new companies are also required to give back to the community in the form of educational services, such as speaking to or coaching students and younger entrepreneurs that have less experience, or providing paid apprenticeships to students is part of the growth of their company, which also has the added benefit of providing real, genuine work experience, something that's in short supply for these, you know, younger folks. And it also exposes them to an entrepreneurial culture, the startup mentality, which is significantly different than doing as our parents did, you know, get through some schooling and go work for somebody. The Innovation Fund of Northeast Ohio has seen tremendous success in the first 6 years. And Roy, you had me nervous there for a second because this is a big part of my talk to brag about how awesome the outcomes are. And I was afraid you were going to run off and do it for me. They've invested over $6.5 million in 94 companies. Those companies have gone on to create more than 300 jobs. They've provided more than 150 paid internships, generate over $17 million in revenue, and have raised over $71 million in follow-on funding. Think about that, on $6.5 million. You got that right. I ask you, and more importantly, I ask those that hold you accountable in your communities, who wouldn't want that kind of return on investment? Who wouldn't want to have that happening in their communities? And the other, side benefit to this is, and this is the case that happens with first-generation companies in the first generation of their existence, these companies are staying put in Northeast Ohio. This is really emboldening this notion that you can't make it here, and the here you can insert any one of your own community names there. In my travels at the foundation, nationally and globally, it's become an occupational hazard that I've had to calcify around hearing the complaints that, well, maybe over there they can do it, but here we don't have that. And I don't care where the here is, you're all in the same boat, but that's not the case, and that narrative is changing in Northeast Ohio in no small part to what's happening with the Innovation Fund. We have been so impressed, as I've already said, with the work and the outcomes that they're having that we had asked Roy and his fabulous team to join us in building this new model. So it is that we've partnered to create Innovation Fund America, a new 501c3 national one, through which we will identify schools that are willing and able to take on such ambitious and game-changing projects and work with them as they build their own innovation funds. In the pilot phase of IFA, we wanted to find colleges serving very different communities, communities that need this program, but also schools that have leaders who exemplify an innovative and progressive approach to economic development. These leaders also have an unrelenting determination to change their communities for the better, doing so in the face of diminishing resources from state, federal, and other sources, and within an industry, I want to be very specific about this, within an industry that has, in my humble opinion, become far too comfortable with lowered expectations and resignation to the thought that decline is inevitable. For all the great sessions and knowledge sharing that went on here this week, I also heard far too much complaining and, frankly, weakness, or worse yet, acceptance of their fate. Now, I'm making this statement and offending many of you mainly to ensure that I'll never work in academia. I guarantee you I'd be fired within inside of a year. That's because I have the entrepreneur mutation, gene mutation. However, I am encouraged that we did find shining exceptions here in San Diego, exceptions that we are going to start identifying as our slingshotters. Pause to see knowing grin on the face of several in the audience. You know who you are because you were kind enough to join us in private meetings and dinners this week. And among our slingshotters, we've identified 3 schools in particular that are not waiting for something or someone or some agency to come to the rescue. We have found 3 schools with widely diverse backgrounds and portfolio of community assets, but also unique challenges. And we have selected these 3 schools to join us on our journey of discovery. And I want to be clear on this. This is not, this is not a theory that's coming down from the mighty Kauffman Foundation on high that says, thou shalt do this and you will be successful. This is an experiment. This is us, living entrepreneurship in the ethos of what we do as well. And the schools that we're identifying here today understand that as well. I want to be clear, the work that we funded was in partnership with Lorain County Community College so that we could distill the playbook, the best practices, build the franchisable model. But the schools that are signing up so far are not getting a dime from us. They had to sign up to the notion of having to go out and raise money in their community and fund their own ambition in this while we're there to help them along the way. So those of you who are joining us on this ambition, I'd like to acknowledge at the moment, and I'd like to ask the leaders stand up. They are Long Beach City College in Long Beach, California, Johnson County Community College in Overland Park, Kansas, and Catawba Valley Community College in Hickory, North Carolina. Joining us this morning from those schools are Dr. Terry Calloway, President, Johnson County Community College. Would you please stand? Dr. Garrett Hinshaw, President, Catawba Valley Community College, and Lou Ann Bynum, Executive Vice President for College Advancement and Economic Development at Long Beach City College. Please join me in congratulating them on their vision. They are among several others, and as I said, the slingshotters among you are very much in that group, but they are among several others that are distinguishing themselves nationally, and they do so in service of very different communities facing different challenges and constraints. This was important. For those of you who are wondering what the criteria was, what we needed to do, since this was a proof of concept phase, is we had to have mixed portfolio. So in other words, we couldn't be completely deploying in a solely urban environment or solely suburban or rural environment. So there was actually a bit of a method to the madness behind it. And I think in the portfolio of schools that we've selected, we'll have approachable and ideas and best practices that will resonate with just about every school in this room. Now, they are facing these challenges, as I've mentioned, but they're also united in the belief that the future of workforce development must include entrepreneurship as a viable and high potential return on community investment, one that will generate returns for generations to come. We are excited to be working with you on this important effort. We all have a great deal of work ahead of us, but I'm confident we have the right team to achieve something truly great, and I thank you for that. Now, if you'll permit me, I'd like to take a few more moments to talk about what we at the Kauffman Foundation see as a great challenge and opportunity before us all in the room this morning. At last year's NACCE conference, I characterized the change coming to academia as the community college's moonshot moment. And for those of you who are familiar with JFK's speech at Rice University, you understand that the challenge was that the Russians had finally got Yuri Gagarin into orbit, and we all of a sudden felt very small as a nation. And it was at that moment that we felt as a nation we had to really go for disruptive innovation. In that example, our national response was decisive, urgent, and unified. We mustered our industry and great untapped capacity for innovation, and before the close of the decade, we put a man on the moon. We need this kind of ingenuity and energy from community colleges right now. And, as Heather Van Sickle at NACCE and Jen at those conferences had to endure, I was the angry guy up on the stage wondering aloud, why don't I see or feel a shared sense of urgency to what's happening in academia? Because it's coming. You can see it from a mile away. If you haven't read, works on this, like from Clayton Christensen, please do it. It's going to change the industry. And if you don't believe me, talk to anybody that works at a newspaper or in the music industry. The deficiencies in higher education today are amplified by a vastly underprepared workforce, cost of education that's growing at an unsustainable pace, and overall lacking of critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Change is going to have to come to higher education, whether you're ready for it or not. We're paying too much for the wrong kind of education and getting too little in return. And I say that mostly targeted at the four-year environment. For me, it's so nuts. It reminds me of the old Woody Allen bit that, the food in this restaurant is so terrible and the portions are so small. So I know I'm not saying anything you haven't heard already from President Obama, all the way on down to most of the people on this stage over the past 3 days. But workforce development at community colleges is a big part of how we're going to solve this problem. But workforce development is too often defined, in our estimation, narrowly as simply a partnership between the community college and local industry. If that's your main economic development objective as a college, you're enabling only a small part of the economic potential that's in your community. Please reflect for a moment on what Roy said in his comments on the research that we've done, where the new jobs are coming from. So to really achieve sustained, what we'll call homegrown prosperity that is strong enough to weather the next downturn, you've got to be obsessed with creating a workforce of entrepreneurial thinkers and doers. You do not have to aspire to start a company to benefit from an entrepreneurial mindset. I want to say that again. For too many people, the big E word, entrepreneur, automatically takes them to an intangible place of startup worlds and Facebooks and things that are just foreign to them. But you do not have to aspire to do that to benefit from an entrepreneurial mindset. Ask any one of your large employers if they would prefer an employee with an entrepreneurial mindset over one without. I know the answer you'll get. That realization was part of the motivation behind a revolutionary new entrepreneurship curriculum program we launched a little over a year ago at NACCE Portland called the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program. Using innovative models and experiential-based education, the Ice House Entrepreneurship Curriculum helps participants understand the underlying beliefs and assumptions that drive successful entrepreneurial behavior. That's very, very important. In addition to understanding or helping them realize an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control. In the swag bag that you received from the conference, you hopefully saw some propaganda from us. In it, you will find information on this program. And just for your information, the next facilitator certification program that we'll be hosting at the Foundation in Kansas City is in early March, and seats are filling fast with participants, and pay attention to this, with participants coming from Malaysia, the United Kingdom, India, I have news for you. In my global travels, I can tell you firsthand that the secret advantage of American entrepreneurial spirit, that secret is getting out. And buddy, when the rest of the world figures that out, if you think we have a tough go of it now, you haven't seen anything yet. So please consider, stopping by and checking out that program. I have with me today one of my colleagues, Prentice Earl, over here. Prentice is the program officer for the Ice House program, so if you lost our propaganda in your swag bag, feel free to grab Prentice. Why is this important? It's important because graduates of programs like these and others and those that will go through the IFA model, they are going to be, among them, founders of high-growth, innovative companies, while others will take that entrepreneurial spark and become invaluable employees within the firms they serve, while yet others will pursue the path of self-employment within the skilled trades. Even within the self-employed skilled trades, an entrepreneurial mindset will propel people to consider a trajectory to their craft that will allow them to leverage the labor and output of others to a scale that will generate greater wealth for themselves and employment opportunities for others. And I know a little something about this space. I've been a founder and partner in several professional service firms. And there's only so many hours in the day, week, month, and year that you can charge for. It's really recognizing the idea that you can leverage labor or output of others beyond that of simply the hours you can put in a day that starts that epiphany in their thinking, that I can start charging on a value base and not a pure time base. I got the opportunity to share a very personal story that kind of highlights this, and I'd like to share it with all my new friends here. For those of you who don't know, I'm the son of German immigrants. My parents, I'm an anchor baby. So all you xenophobics that get all crazy about that, you can hate me for that. My parents and brother, as a matter of fact, came here in 1963. My father is what is known as a master mold, tool, and die maker. This is a very special craft that is a dying craft, but one that is still in great demand. For all the advances in CNC machining and things like that, there's still a point where you get to that a human with a high level of skill has to be able to grind and work on a mold to tolerances of like 1/10,000th of an inch. And growing up as a child in the summer, my dad would take my brother and I to the shop with him on occasion, and I actually have memories of him standing over, a 3-ton mold press. So he worked in that company for 34 years when finally it was acquired by a Korean holding company. And they did what many companies at that time did. They fired everybody and then rehired them at 40% reduction in wages. All of your tenured and accrued vacation time gone. And congratulations. Unfortunately, the majority of the people in that factory had to take that lot. Now, my father and mother, being the immigrants that they were, squirreled away every nickel they ever had. They were that cliche that, didn't buy a car until they had the cash to pay for it. So he went into early retirement, and he became the Hausfrau. And my mother, who was working for a car dealership, continued to have the benefits of the family. On a side note, it was very fortuitous that happened because 6 months later he was diagnosed with cancer, a diagnosis that probably would have never happened had he still been working, and I'm happy to say he kicked it, he survived. But 3 years after he left, and because, as I've mentioned, this is not a growing field. As a matter of fact, the apprenticeship program, the draftsman, journeyman, that whole process, it's a 5-year process. My father said that he hadn't mentored somebody in that program over the last 18 to 20 years of his 34 years there. That's how old the workforce is. So when he turned 60, he got a phone call from his company, the old plant manager. Hey, Manny, when, you're a healthy guy. And my father's name's Manfred. They obviously shortened it. How about you coming back to work? And you know what? Different times, you can come back at your old pay rate, maybe a little bit less. So my dad comes to me and he says, what do you think? I'm like, well, are you bored? Do you need to go back? Like, nah. I like some new toys, though. I said, well, why don't you do this? I'm going to write you a one-page proposal. And I want you to take it back and say, I'll come back to work as a 1099 consultant, contractor, for $150 an hour. Oh, I could never do that. Tomas, you know how much I was making when I left? That's like 3-4 times. I said, don't worry about that. This is not about what you were making when you left. It has nothing to do with that. You know, one of the coolest things he did when he was working, the big three were their biggest clients. And when one of their molds brought a line to a halt, you know what the penalty was on those contracts? Hundreds of thousands of dollars it could cost them. My dad, just, Factory Joe, had at his disposal a corporate jet. And when one of the lines went down because of a mold of theirs, the company sent a car to the house, picked up my dad. He had this wicked cool traveling tool set. I don't know if it was in the Snap-on box that was given away. But it was a really cool tool set, and, they would land at some smallest, closest airport they could. That car would be waiting. They'd whisk him right there. I mean, you would think he was like a brain surgeon coming and doing emergency surgery on the president. Now, he didn't know better at the time, right? He was thrilled because he would get time and a half normally, and then if it was a weekend or holiday, which happened on more than one occasion, he would get double time. So I'll shorten the story to say basically they went back and forth and settled on $100 an hour, and he set his hours. So he would either show up, well before rush hour or well after. And trust me, the guys in the factory knew he had gotten some kind of special gig. And when he walked onto the floor, they looked at him a lot differently. And rightfully so. Now, the real fun part about that is he only did it for about 6 months. He was like, nah, I'm getting too old for this crap. And took the money, or some of the money, and he took my mother on a 3-week Hawaiian vacation. So, thank you. I like it too. My dad's a pretty cool guy, as is my mom. As a matter of fact, she thinks I'm so bright, she calls me son. So today we know that the skilled trades are in demand, even for 60-year-old retirees. But we owe it to our students to give them more than just technical training. We need to give them an entrepreneurial mindset. After all, do you know what's better? I mean, really think about this, right? We know that the skilled trades are in demand right now, but what's better than being in demand is being in control. And you are being entrusted to give them the knowledge that lets them control that. To accomplish these ambitions, I'm challenging the slingshotters among you and those we hope that will join our ranks and bring your college's commitment to the entrepreneurship and take it out of the business department. Keep it from being sequestered to some different thing. Bring entrepreneurship resources to the students and community members where they already are, rather than asking them to come and find you or otherwise fit into the boxes you want to make them fit into. Some of your students may self-identify as future entrepreneurs. This isn't about whether entrepreneurs are born versus made, can they be taught or not. If any of you are still engaging in that silly debate, stop it. There's no profit in it. This is about making sure that everyone, regardless of background, education level, or interest, at the very least perceives the opportunity to be entrepreneurial. Let them define that for themselves, but give them the basic blocks to understand that they can see that. This is about ensuring that everyone understands what it means to go through their self-driven careers with an entrepreneurial mindset. You have to inject this ethos into your classrooms and into your practical training. Democratizing access to entrepreneurship is not only the right, egalitarian, and American thing to do, it's really the key to our nation's continued economic prosperity. And the great news for all of us in the room is that community colleges are in the best possible position to be the front door to entrepreneurship. This was the key message I tried to make at NACCE last year. I think it is so genuine and real that this is your opportunity to go from being the little sibling of academia to challenging the big brothers and sisters that are up there and even surpassing them as you give better level of service to the students you serve. But you're going to have to work hard to demonstrate yourselves as being relevant to these communities of entrepreneurs, especially those pursuing high-growth ventures. So please let me leave you with a few practical considerations of how you can begin to make your campuses true resources to entrepreneurs in your community and drivers of the entrepreneurial change. As I've mentioned this morning, it's imperative that you integrate entrepreneurship curriculum into other training programs. Don't wait for these students and future entrepreneurs to come from your community to come and find you. Reach them where they already are. Make some course in the entrepreneurial mindset a general education requirement. I mentioned Ice House. There's others, plenty of them. I'm not just trying to hawk one product, but give them some training and make it a gen ed requirement. You know, we've had students that have gone through the Ice House program in particular now, and they said things like, now I understand why my education is relevant. They've said things like, geez, I wish this was the first class I took in my educational career. Putting in that place at that access allows people to see things that none of us in this room are smart enough to anticipate. This is maybe the best way for you to ensure that everyone who enrolls in a degree or certificate program at your college will at the very least perceive the opportunity to be an entrepreneur and to grow a company and make jobs and revenue in their home communities. Please emphasize apprenticeships, practical application, and experiential learning opportunities for everyone on campus. For too long, the narrative has been around, you know, the mechanics, the business plan, you know, the paper stuff, all the things that don't force you outside the comfort of the four walls of a classroom. All the things that, you know, force you to take students down a path that's, you know, 20, 30 years old. You know, we've been doing the today, so I was going to do something like that, but I actually think it might be embarrassing. So don't do this unless you really want to stand out. But like metaphorically, let's just say, if you teach or have any role in teaching entrepreneurship on your campus, stand up. And don't do that, because I'm going to embarrass you if you do. But let's just pretend you did, so you know if you are or you're not. Now, for any one of you who are in that role but have never started a company, please sit down. We'll wait, because probably 75% of you just sat down. For those of you who are still standing, how many of you have done that multiple times, been responsible for hiring many people, understand the troubles and pains of making payroll? If you haven't, please sit down. See where I'm going with this? It's the practical part that we need to emphasize. So do simple things that help get those practical experiences out there, like offering, you know, to host a startup weekend, another program of ours that we're wildly happy with. Or do regular entrepreneur meetups or networking events. We do this thing called 1 Million Cups every Wednesday morning at the foundation. We bring in 2 startup folks to talk about, you know, their startup, and then we have people in the audience just pepper them with questions, and it's intended to be an educational program. It's part of our Kauffman Labs program. We actually have, in addition to my role on the foundation side, I'm president of Kauffman Labs for Enterprise Creation, which is our school, and we use this as a curriculum program to give them real-world anxiety, right? But in a safe harbor. The unintended benefit that came out of this we never anticipated was that it's now the hottest ticket in town to have on Wednesday morning, you know, and we're getting people from the community, as many as 250 people showing up. It's creating a really happy problem for us, and it cost me, you know, a couple $100 worth of coffee to throw out there. You know, our friends at Catawba Valley Community College have already done something that I thought was kind of cool when I heard it. They renamed the Small Business Development Center because, you know, when you put small in the name, you've already lowered the ambitions and expectations of the entrepreneurs it serves. So develop close ties with the sources of funding and for new and high-growth startups in your community. Here in San Diego, for example, we met, and Jen, where are you? You know, you thought I was blowing off sessions. I actually had a couple other meetings set up. We met with Accion, a terrific microfinance institution that makes capital available to founders who may not otherwise qualify for startup loans. And I guarantee you there are other microfinance institutions and community development financial institutions in your service area too. Get ahead of this curve that's going to be coming called crowdfunding. How many of you are paying attention to this on campus? Unfortunately, that should be everybody's hand going up. This year or next, depending upon when the SEC gets their stuff together, thanks to the Jobs Act, crowdfunding is going to revolutionize how new companies are capitalized. And community colleges are so well positioned to connect the entrepreneurial talent in their communities with the scores of willing investors waiting for the opportunity to get a piece of the next big startup. So please knit yourself into the startup ecosystem that probably already exists within your community, but which would benefit terrifically from the specialized resources, meeting spaces, and expertise you can offer. And while we're on things that I'm asking you to do, please read Brad Feld's book, Startup Communities, if you haven't already. In it, he lays out a deceptively simple but remarkably astute prescription for how vibrant startup communities are made and the appropriate roles for all of the players in it. Be a connector. Map out the other resources in your community. So when an entrepreneur comes to town and asks, who should they call first to get integrated into the startup community, the universal response should be the community college, without a doubt. So lastly, and most importantly, please hire the right people. As with anything that's really important in life, entrepreneurship support isn't about having the best toys or the most beautiful new buildings. Try to hire just one great, energetic entrepreneur in residence, someone with deep ties to the community and somebody with, history of some level of success and commitment to giving back. And if you do all of these things, you'll be among the best community colleges in the country. You will be pioneers. You will lead new discussions about metrics so we can change the narrative of what gets measured on your part and in return you get funded for. And if that isn't a moonshot moment and an objective, I don't know what it is. I want to thank you for your time and attention this morning. I congratulate you and Jen and Jim for a great conference. I look forward to carrying on this conversation and exposing the slingshotters to you. Boy, there's a hashtag, expose slingshotters. So thank you, and I think at this time we want to bring the panel up for our discussion. Is that correct? Cool.
The title of this session this morning is Making Waves, and that just so happens to be one of the things that we do best at the Kauffman Foundation. Tom, you do it in particular with a real glint in your eye. But it's easy for us to throw down this gauntlet because we don't have to answer to the dizzying numbers of community college stakeholders in the same way that really you all do. But we're not making it in a vacuum, this call to action. We're basing it in large part on the examples of visionary leadership that we see already among the very best, most innovative presidents and senior staff who have already accomplished so much to change the accepted notion of what workforce development is and how to have the maximum sustained impact on the long-term prosperity of their communities. The folks that you see next to me at this table are already forging a bold path in integrating comprehensive resources for entrepreneurs across campus, both curriculum and, even more importantly, vital experiential learning opportunities for founders of companies. I'm going to ask them to briefly describe. I had asked them to prepare to speak for about 5 minutes. I might suggest more like 3. To briefly describe what they've accomplished so far, noting, of course, that they're far from done. But first, I'd like to ask Heather Van Sickle from the National Association for Community College Entrepreneurship to help me frame these activities as examples of commitments to campus-wide entrepreneurship. But before I do that, Heather, I'd like to tell you very quickly a little bit about who I have up here with me. Heather Van Sickle has been president and CEO of NACCE, the National Association for Community College Entrepreneurship, for the past 7 years. She's taken NACCE from a college-dependent project to a thriving, self-sustaining, separately organized 501c3. She has grown the organization from 0 to over 300 community colleges, and she's nowhere close to done. Dr. Garrett Hidenshaw has been instrumental in strengthening Catawba Valley Community College's commitment to business and industry since being named president in 2006. He's played a key role in the expansion of the college's Manufacturing Solutions Center and development of the Regional Simulated Hospital, the only one of its kind in the state and the largest east of the Mississippi River. Lorain Bynum is Executive Vice President of College Advancement and Economic Development at the Long Beach City College District. She oversees college advancement, economic development, and workforce training, community and corporate education and training, federal and state grants and contracts, community relations and marketing, welfare to work programs, and special resource development projects on behalf of the district. Lorain has over 25 years of experience in the public and private sectors, linking education and training to business and industry needs with a focus on developing a well-trained workforce and providing businesses and industry opportunities to grow and create jobs. Paul Corson is a special assistant to the president at Lorain County Community College. Previously, he was senior policy advisor in the Commerce Department's International Trade Administration, where he led a global initiative to improve policy environments for entrepreneurship and innovation. Prior to joining Commerce, he held senior management positions for SMEs and startups in the United States, the Caucasus, and Central Asia. He holds an MA in International Relations from the George Washington University and a BA in Political Economies from Franklin and Marshall College. I think that's all of us. So Heather, do you want to give it a whirl?
Sure, and I'll try to speak fast. I actually have a lot of the same thoughts from a different perspective that Tom's already shared. So I just wanted to start with a quote from Margaret Mead. It's one you're probably all familiar with, which is, "Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world." And then she said, "For indeed, that's all who ever have." So I've been at this for a while, and I wanted to now share with you a few of my observations and recommendations. Almost 100% of the challenges that I've seen in the 14 years working with community colleges are really no different from challenges that are faced in business. There are challenges externally, absolutely, and everyone's aware of those. However, from my vantage point, I'm more alarmed at the challenges I see internally at the community colleges. And I'll just give you a quick personal example. Years ago, I used to work in the shoe department of a retail store. What the customer didn't know is that the shoe department was actually separately owned. So if you bought a dress and jewelry and then you went to pick out your shoes and you went to check out, you actually couldn't buy all of your purchases in the same place. You had to buy your shoes there and then go to a separate place, which is frustrating for the customer. So they'd say, "Oh, I'll just take all my stuff over to the other department." Well, no, you can't actually buy your shoes over there. That sometimes is the experience from a student's perspective from the community college. So I want to ask the question, does that happen at your college? We all talk about students and their success as being paramount. Yeah, I've listened for years about unions and tenure and complicated structures of the community college. So are your systems set up to support the college first or students in your community first? Are you student-centric in your approach? Because that's what the for-profits are, and they're your competition. So know your customer, and your customer, as has already been talked about, is your students, your community, your funders, government, corporations, everyone in your community. So focus on them and their needs. Your structures and your internal politics don't matter to the customers. Otherwise, they're going to walk away and they're going to look at alternatives as they emerge. The other thing, and I'll say this briefly because Tom, you already talked about it quite a bit, but we hear a lot of doom and gloom out of Washington and the states and the resources, but why wait on Washington and your state? I was thinking of the idea when you're younger, maybe your parents paid for your car, they could dictate what they did, but now hopefully you pay for your own car, you don't need parents to dictate that. Same thing with the colleges. As resources continue to decline, don't have the same conditioned mindset that they can still put the policies on it. I know you can't ignore the world that you live in, but instead of complaining, be committed to figuring it out. So are the policies broken? Is the success definition off? Are other people describing what success should be for you? Change that. And will it be easy? No. But is it possible? Absolutely. So your success or failure is determined by how you look at your situations and then the actions that follow. So do you see opportunities or do you see insurmountable challenges? It comes down, as anything does, to navigating human relationships, the ability to make effective partnerships, articulate your message, know when to walk away from dysfunctional relationships, recognize self-interest. In other words, think like an entrepreneur. But that's the one side of the equation. I'm also very impressed by the colleges that are getting it right. And you'll hear from my esteemed colleagues up here on the panel. So some brief observations from what the difference is. One major shift that these colleges have made is asset-based thinking instead of deficit thinking. So when you increase your focus on what's right, or asset-based thinking, and decrease your focus on what's wrong, or the deficit-based thinking, you naturally build enthusiasm, energy, strengthen relationships, and move people and productivity to the next level. A pattern I've also recognized with these colleges is that overnight success takes a minimum of 10 to 15 years to achieve. And once you've reached that success, you have to keep going. That line of success just keeps moving forward. And the other thing is you have to show success first, and then the money will follow. We see that in the case with Lorain and the Innovation Fund. A lot of the schools have the mentality of let's get the money so that we can be successful. But an athlete doesn't begin training for the race the day of the race, so his overnight success to the outside world is really years of preparation in the making. So the schools, they know their community, they know the customer, they know that people matter, clear communications matter, focus and persistence matters, and to accomplish great things, they surround themselves with committed and persistent people. So are you surrounded by committed and persistent people? And if you're not, you can change that. So we as a collective, the community college industry, have to ask, what will it take to get from where we are to where we want to be? And the cool thing is that somebody is already there, and someone's probably closer to being there than you are, and someone is farther behind that than you are. But compare your success or failure against your own progress, and then it pays to know the people who have gone on that same path before you. So follow their steps to success. How did they get there? What did they take? What path did they take? How long did it take? The answer is going to be different, and your communities are all a little bit different, but there's something to learn from all of those achievements. Don't underestimate the power of the few. Tom had mentioned about some Bradfeld and some of the things that the Boulder thesis, as he called it. NACY's created something called the Presidents for Entrepreneurship Pledge. I won't go into all of that, but if you don't know about those, go to the website, nacy.com. These commitments are a framework for the steps to success that you're going to hear about from these colleges. So anyone to commit to taking that journey with me, and any of you forward-thinking peers, you can email me directly, vansickle@nacy.com. Just put, I want to commit in the subject line, and I'll help you out. So don't go alone. We've established an asset base. We'll figure it out and be successful people. And one other comment on Tom's, the idea of the retirement. Many of you are retiring out rapidly, so it's imperative that you build the right successor for your community college to be all that it needs to be in the coming years. Make sure you choose successors who are committed to these steps and are willing to overcome barriers. So all this, I know, is easy to say. It's difficult to do. If it were easy, no one would be doing it, and it really wouldn't matter because it wouldn't have much impact. So it's frustrating, it can be chaotic, it can be messy, but anything worth doing is like that. I was thinking that's how sausage is made and babies are born, right? But going back to that quote, never believe that a few caring people can't change the world. In closing, for those of you that care enough about the dream to overcome the obstacles, I look forward to working with you in the years ahead as we continue to build overnight success. Yeah, it's vansickle@nacce.com.
Please.
Thank you, Heather. Good morning, everyone. And I really want to start by just saying thank you to the Kauffman Foundation and the work that NACY's done, but especially, I guess, the individual that I consider to be the path blazer, and that's Dr. Roy Church of Lorain County Community College. It took a new way of thinking. He began thinking this way back in 2002. Just a little bit about Catawba Valley, our region. 2006. 56% of our economy was manufacturing. Guess what? 2012, down to 23%, still viable, but 40,000 jobs without. So it created a community that was left with a void, a time for a community college to step forward and take the leadership within our communities. And CVCC was able to do that. Because we don't believe that the day starts at 8 and ends at 5, that the week starts on Monday and ends on Friday. Because we believe that we had to do some things to disrupt the thinking of the traditionalist way of doing business. We did that through controlled chaos. And believe me, I make a lot of people uncomfortable. I don't even buy shoes that fit because I like to be uncomfortable. But it's necessary in this environment. You know, you can sit around board tables and conference tables and talk about problems all day. We can sit around and lament in our financial situations and things that are happening in our communities. You can do that forever. But until you actually decide to do something, to start moving and get that perpetual motion in place to move the masses, it's very difficult to have progress. At Catawba Valley Community College, how many of you know Bubba Watson? Have heard of Bubba Watson? Masters winner? Wearing our socks when he won the Masters. How many of you have heard of Nike, Under Armour? Companies that we currently work with to help them increase the bottom line through our Manufacturing Solutions Center. These are the types of innovations of changing our mindset and turning ourselves inside out to our community. It's no longer sitting behind our walls and our nice offices and classroom environments. We have to be accountable to our customers who are the business people and future business people. And we do that through creating a strategic philosophy, not a strategic plan that sits on a shelf, but a strategic philosophy that every one of our stakeholders is an entrepreneur, an interpreneur, as we changed the name, because they will decide for themselves. They have the ability to do it. It's our job to empower them and provide them the support that's necessary to move forward. And, you know, it's such a refreshing time for me. It's an exciting time because now we get to really move forward. We really get the challenge to say, put your money where your mouth is, Henshaw, and let's get this thing done in the Catawba Valley region. And we believe we're up to the challenge. We have hired the good people, the people who understand failure. Without failure, you learn nothing. With success, you move forward. And we're just pleased to be a part of this initiative. We're pleased about the many things that we're going to be able to contribute. How many of you saw the Christmas tree in Washington, D.C. at the White House this year? Catawba Valley Community College alum provided that Christmas tree. That's the type of disruptive thinking. You see, I bounce around. I see butterflies everywhere. So that's the type of thing that you have to be committed to as an institution. No longer, this is the way we do it, and you have to adjust. But more so, tell us how to help you reach your fullest potential. And we're glad to be a part of this initiative and a part of being able to reach out there and help everyone. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you to the Kauffman Foundation and WDI, and we're really excited to be working with our IFA partners. Tom had mentioned earlier disruptive innovation, and I don't know if we had any cataclysmic disruptions in the process that we went through trying to build a workforce economic development platform, but I can tell you that we had a number of times where we had to claw our way out of frustration because what we were doing, we recognized that our model wasn't working. We recognized that we had to expand and how we focused on things. We started, Heather mentioned 10 to 15 years. I started at Long Beach City College 15 years ago. There were two of us. We had 2 FTEs, no money, no history. It took about 2 or 3 years to build workforce development programs and to recruit the right talent. Everybody here has talked about the importance of talent, and so if you hire people and they're not entrepreneurial in their thinking and if they don't have enough gas in them, then it's not going to work. But after about 3 or 4 years, we recognized also we had a robust workforce development arm and realized that we were educating our students for career trajectories. We were training incumbent workers, new workers for our local regional economy, and we just didn't have the jobs to be able to place the students in. So we strategically and intentionally focused on building a business support platform so we could make sure that we were closing the loop in those 3 pieces because we saw them just so intricately connected that we weren't going to be successful if we didn't. We had a couple of contracts with the Port of Long Beach and with the City of Long Beach to do business development. And I said last night to the Slingshot group, we kind of faked our way through the proposal for the SBA for the Los Angeles Regional Network. You know, little engine that could, we pretty much were in that position. It took us 4 or 5 years. We had to build that network from the ground on up. California had some problems in its SBDC program, so we had to start anew. It took us 4 or 5 years to build the infrastructure for that, to get the right partners on board, to get accreditation in place. And once we were able to get to a point where that had some sustainability, we were then attracting other kinds of opportunities. The Goldman Sachs Foundation came to us to work with us, wanted us to be a site to run the 10,000 Small Business Program in Los Angeles. We launched that in 2010. We've had about 140 graduates thus far. We were involved and fortunate enough to be working with AACC and NACI in the Virtual Incubator Network project. If you all don't know about that, please go online at AACC and take a look at it. It's a wonderful toolkit of best practices for how you can incubate and bring on entrepreneurship in your college. And now we're part of the Innovation Fund America. We are looking for ways. We can't do everything and be everything to everybody. We want to be good in a very few areas and be really able to support our local community. So we're looking for ways to be able to sustain what we're doing. It doesn't matter how the funding goes. If we can't bring it on ourselves, I think you've commented on that, we don't deserve to be in the sandbox then playing. So IFA presents a great opportunity to mobilize and capitalize on some of the energy that is going on in Los Angeles in terms of emerging technologies and those kinds of things. So it's been 15 years. It's been a tough haul, and it has been very frustrating. Disruptive innovation, this may be cataclysmic because Jesse Torres came into my office this week. He's a regional director for the SBDC and said he wants to blow up the box for the network. I said, okay, what does that look like? And I think it speaks to, also Tom had mentioned it the other day about SBDCs and the models. They do a great job, but there's something more there in that model that needs to be worked on. So we're going to be taking a look at that as well. But anyways, I'm happy to be here. I feel very honored to be sitting here with all of you too. So thank you very much.
Sorry, Paul, we're out of time. No, I'm just going to go ahead.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here as well. I'm a bit of a simpleton, and I like pictures, and so I was happy to see this little book up here on the stage. But I want with my time not to rebeat the Lorain horse, but to take a little bit of a higher level picture and some of my experience and views and some of the connections that I made just even in the last day, talking with a number of the Slingshotters and other schools. Any surfers in the crowd? I grew up at the shore and could never surf, just didn't have it in me. But as I've looked at the entrepreneurial space, I've looked at the economic development space, I've looked at the higher ed space, and in particular the basic applied and developmental research. To me, it's very much like the surfers that I used to watch when I was at the boardwalk. You have to have an incredible vision as you're getting prepared. You have to be able to look out at the ocean. You have to figure out which wave are you going to ride. Do you pick the right one always? No. Do you miss a lot of them? Absolutely. But you have to have some kind of intuitive sense about which wave to try and get on, and for that you need a really long-term vision. And then as the waves come, you need to switch from the vision to the preparation. You need to spin the board, you need to start paddling, and then you need to try and get the right timing. Again, incredibly difficult. Once you're on the wave, then you have to switch to your instincts. You don't have time to think, you don't have time to focus or concentrate or analyze. You just have to go with it, and you have to trust your instincts, and you just have to ride it out and see where it goes. And when that falls, you get off, you turn around, and you look for the next wave. And that's really what I think the challenge is right now for the nation, for universities, for community colleges, for individuals. All of us, we're all struggling to see where are the waves and then have the mindset to be able to switch from vision to preparation to execution. And so I think there are two things that I've been particularly involved in where that applies. And one is in the economic development space. For us in the feds, it was looking at culverts and dams and airport runway extensions and traditional economic development models, and looking at the transition to incubators and accelerators and proof of concept funds and things like that. Right? Then in the research space, there are all kinds of transitions going on. And in particular, the government doesn't have money to pay for a lot of it. Industry doesn't want to take the time or dedicate the resources to it because they have outside pressures. Universities are still set up to do research. Community colleges have never, we still say at Lorain, we don't do research. Well, I think we do, right? We just do a different type of research. We do the research that it takes to apply technologies and opportunities to products and businesses to get things in the market. And so, yesterday with the slingshotters and this morning, what I've been thinking about is, you know, for community colleges, there's an opportunity to develop centers of applied entrepreneurship. We have centers for welding, we have centers for hosiery, we have centers for wine, we have centers, you name it, a community college has a center for it, right? But I think what's happening is as we look at the waves, we try and spin the board and we try and get up on top and execute. It's this idea of transitioning things around to a center for applied entrepreneurship. And maybe that ends up going into a big company, maybe it ends up going into a spin out, maybe it ends up going nowhere. That's part of the challenge, and that's what we all do. But that's sort of the lessons that I've been learning, and you know, for what it is, my simple thought about where we are collectively and how we're going to try and get there. So we're happy to be a part of it. Again, I personally am happy. I left the government for higher ed, and I wanted to do something that was transformational. I think I found a good spot with Lorain, but I also think I found a really great spot in community colleges. So thank you.